Thank you all for coming. If you could please give a very warm ShmooCon welcome to Imposter with future breaches and past disasters, volunteering with the ITDRC.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So, like you said, I'm Imposter, also known as Ian, and this is going to be Future Breaches and Past Disasters. We're going to talk a little bit about ITDRC, the Information Technology Disaster Resource Center, a volunteer organization that's very near and dear to my heart. So we're going to run through a little bit of an intro about what ITDRC is, and then a little bit about me, and then we'll talk some about the historical ITDRC ops that you might have heard of, talk a couple of field stories and some of the skills you'll use in the fields, then a little bit about joining us, and hopefully, if I talk fast enough, we'll do a wrap-up and have a time for a question or two. So ITDRC is the Information Technology Disaster Resource Center. We are a volunteer-run nonprofit that was founded to bring aid to communities in need after disaster strikes. And when I say aid, I mean people and equipment that are built to get these communities back online and get them connected back to the world after a disaster strikes. We were founded in the late 2000s, like 2008-ish, by our founders after they were in the field with some other groups and realized that there was a huge gap in the skill sets available to people doing the response. A lot of IT needs were coming up, but not a lot of them were being filled. So they formed ITDRC and built out a group of like-minded individuals to come and help start filling those needs. They partnered with a lot of companies that you may know and love to build out what is now the Tech Task Force, which is a group of those companies that partner with ITDRC to send both equipment and people that are on the clock with these companies to help out these communities. We've got a national presence with over 5,000 volunteers in all 10 of the FEMA regions. And just a quick couple of stats from 2023, because we don't have the 24 ones yet. But we helped almost 1 million people across the country, deployed equipment to over 1,500 sites. And at those 1,500 sites, we put down almost $3 million worth of equipment. And this is everything from tiny little patch cords to mesh Wi-Fi networks to point-to-multi-point wireless bridges set up to serve campuses of communities that were in need. Ooh, that's the wrong way. So a little bit about me. I'm Ian Furr, also known as Imposter or the Outdoorsy Hacker or at hackoutside.com on Blue Sky. And the reason I'm here is because I'm an ITDRC volunteer. I'm one of the people that goes out into the field to help get these communities back online. I also happen to be the deputy director on our leadership team for Region 3, so I help oversee the state coordinators and the volunteers in DC, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. So if you live in one of these states and want to sign up, you'll get to know me very well as the rest of our Region 3 leadership team. As my day job, I am a senior cybersecurity automation and integrations engineer at the RHISAC, so retail and hospitality. So if you work for one of those companies, you might also know me. And outside of that, by night, I'm a volunteer in Fairfax County as an EMT and on our communications cache in Virginia doing lots of fun radio things. And those are just a couple of my contact details. They'll be at the last slide as well. So I talked a little bit about what ITDRC is organizationally, but our bread and butter is really sending out people and equipment into disaster areas to help get back online. A lot of this ends up being simple network deployments, but it also ranges to those multi-campus, multi-building setups that require consistent and quality amounts of network engineering and planning. But that's not all we do. We also have volunteers that span the roster really from network engineering down to VoIP stuff over to systems engineering, WISP stuff, pretty much any field that you can think of that touches IT in some way, we've got somebody for it. And this comes into play a lot with the more, we'll say, modern disasters that are coming out that are spanning larger areas that have a need for more IT presence. And this isn't just, hey, getting a network back online, but also doing open source intelligence to figure out, hey, this is where there are areas that really got concentrated, hit, and are having trouble getting back online. These are areas that made it through pretty well and still have power and food and resources available, both to house us as volunteers going into the area, but also that we can point out to other people in that area that need to get that help. One of these days I'll learn which way goes forward and which way goes backward on my remote. So ITDRC has been around since 2008, and they've been to a lot of disaster areas. A couple of the ones from recent years that were big ones for us was Hurricane Ian. We had volunteers down in Florida for several months after that happened, helping those communities get back online. With the Kentucky flooding last year, we had people that were out there. Big one right now is the wildfires in California. Not only the historical ones, but the ones that just started in the last few weeks. We already have people that are getting rostered, getting ready to go out and start filling out our plan for that. But that's not the only things we do. We also do planned events like the World Games, which I affectionately refer to as the knockoff Olympics, even though they would probably be very upset with me for saying that. But it's a lot of somewhat esoteric sports that get all together for 4 years and do a very similar Olympic level event. Other things like Operation Don't Walk By, which is a Salvation Army drive up in New York City, and things like that. These pictures on this slide were actually from one of our volunteers that was in North Carolina for Hurricane Helene. We still have people down there today. We had them down there staging before the storm hit, and all the way through now with people that are still setting up sites, moving equipment around to make sure that there's some sort of connectivity for those people. One of the other ones that was a very unique deployment for ITDRC was Project Connect. This was something we started in 2020 when everything moved to being remote first during the pandemic. It was a project to bring Wi-Fi to communities that were underserved or to rural communities that maybe didn't have any access at all. Even now in 2025, there are still sites that we have up that's the sole access to widespread internet for a lot of people. With this one, we set up Wi-Fi using existing infrastructure, but bringing in our own wireless gear to set up hotspots for those communities. In the end, we ended up serving over 25 states and a couple of US territories, and a lot of those are still up today. So I've been with ITDRC for a couple years now. My first deployment was one of the ones that I'm going to talk about in a minute here with the Finger Lakes operation we did, but I've also worked on the Afghan refugee resettlement up in New Jersey and Fort Dix in 2022, the World Games, like I mentioned, but some also smaller stuff, like a search and rescue exercise out in the west side of Virginia, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse last year in Maryland. We had people that were out both setting up stuff in the harbor as well as on the boats that were stranded, because not many people knew this, but the people that were on the boats couldn't get off the boats because they didn't have US visas that were still current, because when a ship docks, they get them for the time that they need to get people on and off, and then that's it. And they didn't have a chance to renew those. So there were people trapped on these boats in the harbor without US SIM cards, without access to Wi-Fi or anything. So they were just kind of stuck on the boats with nothing to do. So we went in and set up Wi-Fi for the ships as well as at the Baltimore International Seafarers Center. And then the other one that I'm really going to talk about is Hurricane Milton. So I'm a big proponent of telling stories via a smattering of pictures. So that's what we've got here. But for the Finger Lakes operation, this was my first ITDRC deployment and what really got me involved in the org. Myself and the, at the time, New York State coordinator, Rick, came up with an idea to go out to Teganic Falls near Ithaca, New York, and simulate a grid down scenario. So we had to bridge an immovable gap, or an incrossable gap, with access that we wouldn't be able to get on the other side. So we set up a cellular backhaul and a Meraki network, and then set up a Unify light bridge to get across. So that's what you can see on that picture on the right-hand side, I think, if it's not mirrored. But The picture on the right there overlooking the falls was our head end setup, where we had a mesh access point and the first half of the light bridge beam. And then that bottom center and other bottom side picture is actually what me and one of the other volunteers hauled out in a very meandering half-mile hike out on the other side, which turned into a half-mile sprint on the way out because we were getting chased out by a rainstorm. Spoiler alert, the rainstorm won. We were very soggy in that picture on the top. But that's the way it goes. You can't always plan for everything. So with this one of the biggest things that we really realized was the biggest skill an ITDRC tech can come into the field with is the ability to troubleshoot and think on their feet. Because we came into this with a whole plan of how the access points were going to mesh and how all the cables we had in our kit were going to work because we tested them. And long story short, nothing ever goes according to plan. We ended up making a patch cable out in the middle of the woods on the other side of the gorge there, and ended up having to figure out, by reading through 16 pages of technical documentation, why the APs weren't really meshing the way we thought we were going to. And in the end, that's the biggest thing with ITDRC. It's coming into the field with expectations on how you're going to be able to meet and help people, and rethinking all of those on the fly when you figure out, oh, hey, the needs that these people have aren't what we expected at all. This is how we set it up for our current team and all of the teams that come after us to really help and make an impact. One of the other huge deployments I was on was Hurricane Milton. We had people set up for Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton at the same time, spread throughout the southeast of the US, all the way from Southern Virginia down to the tip of Florida. I was one of the teams that was starting in North Florida, made our way all the way down south of Tampa, and backtracked our way up through the entire state, hitting all kinds of different places. And every site was different. Up here, I've got pictures from a prison that they had decommissioned and turned into volunteer housing. So imagine signing up to go volunteer somewhere and being told that you're going to go sleep on a prison bed for the night. Yeah. So there we set up Wi-Fi and set up some internet access for the volunteers that were being housed there. In the top, we ended up setting stuff up in a tent so that they could give some internet access to people that were setting up a community feeding center. And on the right there, we've got some pictures from the area we were not really camping, but spending our nights in a bunch of trailer housing pods that they had brought in. But the top left there was a donation warehouse that the state had set up, and we ended up setting up a ton of access points and a Starlink, as well as a VoIP center, so that they could get online and actually coordinate all of the donations that were coming in from across the state and across the country, centralize them all in one spot, and then distribute them out throughout the rest of the state. Each of these sites was different in both the way the needs came in as well as the actual execution on site. Because some of it, you go in, you drop a cellular bridge and an access point, and you're good to go. You roll out, and that's it. Other times, you're stringing Cat6 through the rafters of a warehouse and then setting up access points while you're dangling off the edge of a ladder. Or you're trying to figure out where the heck the roof access is to go throw a Starlink up there. Each site had a different set of needs and a different set of people with a different story behind it. And that's the most impactful part, is being able to be out there and talk to everybody that's going through this disaster together. So one of the huge parts about ITDRC's volunteer base isn't just the people that are out there on the ground, but it's all of the logistics behind them. And that's where our remote response team comes in. They provide situational awareness, mobilization instructions, as well as project oversight to help keep these teams on the ground in line and on mission. But they also act as the first line of defense on the help desk when a site goes down, or act as logistics to get stuff shipped out to these sites. Like I mentioned for the Milton stuff, We were the first people that were assessing these sites to figure out what the actual needs were. And we didn't have everything in the trucks to service every single one of these sites all the time. So we worked with our people back in Dallas to get stuff shipped out and sent to us at the hotels where we were staying or the airfields we were crashing on for the night to set stuff up for the next day. The remote response team is one of the ways that the people who aren't in the field are able to get involved, because it could be a night, a couple hours during the week that everybody's been able to chip in order to keep things going. This, with the cyber incident support team, is one of the biggest additions we've made to the ITDRC capabilities in the last few years. And it's been a way for us to stand up an extra arm and give support to people in the gov, education, utility space in the wake of an actual cyber event. It started as a way to help out and give temporary internet connectivity and a parallel network to somebody we'd partnered with in the past, and has now expanded to a fully fledged team that we just rostered and a bunch of technical assets that are going to be dedicated to this team going forward. And one of the reasons I'm here to talk to everybody today, because we're looking for more volunteers for the future. We need skilled cyber defenders to come in and volunteer their time to help get these teams off the ground and help these companies get back online after a cyber incident. Everything from actually doing the build out of a new network in place, to re-imaging desktops, to setting up this, that, and the other thing that a company or an organization needs to get back online. That all being said, ITDRC is looking for more volunteers always. The way you guys can get involved, if you're interested, is starting out by going to go.itdrc.org/volunteer. From there, fill out our application, do a little bit of the admin paperwork with the background check, the code of conduct, et cetera, and then working through your initial training. It's a simple ITDRC course that gives you a little bit more of an in-depth background compared to what I'm given right now, and then goes through a little bit of organizational history, and then knocking out a couple FEMA courses that talk about the incident management system and the National ICS, the Incident Command System, and NIMS, the National Incident Management System. So with that, I'll take a pause for a sec and open it up for questions. Yeah, right here.
So if you're volunteering for the National Guard or something like that, your workplace is obligated by law to pay the difference in your salary so you don't go into fiscal hock while doing the volunteer thing. Is your organization blessed with that same privilege, or you just got to basically suck it up and go work and not get paid, and how's it work, or does it work?
It depends. For a lot of it, we aren't that same legally protected. Let me repeat the question. He was asking if ITDRC has the same protections as somebody deploying with the National Guard would, or another organization like that, where your position's protected when you come back and you're getting the pay differential while you're volunteering. Because we're just a regular 501c3, we don't have all of those protections in place, but we do partner with a handful of organizations that will let you donate your time and do so as part of your work through them with our tech task force. Not every company does, but there are a handful that have that set up so that you can come out as part of your company's just regular deployment process. Any other questions? Oh, over here.
So you said that when you're deployed, things go wrong. So that makes me want to know, well, what kind of documentation do you have? Like, what policies and procedures? Do you have stuff that people can like read from out of a notebook to know what to do to start with?
Policies and procedures to do what? Sorry?
Like to set the equipment up, to create the networks and whatever infrastructure you have to build?
Yeah, so we have a standard template we'll use, but the template gets altered every time we go to a site. And it'll very much depend on the needs of that site. Like I said, some of it's a quick drop an access point, drop some type of cellular gateway or other external internet feed, and go from there. Other times, you have to build out an entire network through several buildings, across a campus, et cetera. But we have a couple templates in our docs that kind of go through what a standard deployment might look like. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. I'll be outside to take any more questions.